Nearly 10 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I had the worst nightmare of my life. Bad enough that it still haunts me now, and I'm 30. I used to live in a small town in western Colorado with my ex-husband, and the drive over to the next town was about 10 miles and involved multiple curved roads and long straightaways over the mesa and through the valleys. There was never really much traffic, because there was only about 300 people in the town. The most you would get was when there was a cattle drive, moving the cows from one pasture to another. It was beautiful, but desolate, and it had this very isolated feeling. My dream started out with a simple drive from one town over to the small village that we lived in at the time. It appeared as though we were racing a storm, with dark clouds closing in behind our Jeep. I grew up in Kansas and learned to respect storms, even if tornadoes couldn't hit here. I knew the sky could throw down some nasty things whenever it felt like it, and I didn't want to drive in that. After a while, I started realizing the radio wasn't working. I assumed that it was interference from the mountains themselves, one of which our home was located at the base of. The sky was looking like a nasty bruise by then, greenish black and getting darker by the second. I heard what sounded like rain hammering down on the road behind us. The entire area was now fogged over, replacing the usual graceful expanse of grasslands, which made it difficult to see. We passed people in wagons, which would look out of place anywhere else, but in such a western cowboy town, you didn't look twice at something like that. They didn't seem too concerned about the darkness growing behind us. They stared at us hollowly as we passed them in our Jeep. I heard my husband commenting that their eyes looked blank. Ahead of us was another straightaway and the final turn towards home, but the sky was growing dark there as well. This misty dark fog was now coming at us from both sides. I panicked. I didn't even know what was happening anymore. I just knew that I had to avoid the fog. I hit the brakes, put the Jeep in reverse, and headed back the way we had come from. There was a side road that led to a third nearby town. It would hopefully be safer, and we could wait there until whatever this was had passed. The people in the wagons vanished from sight. It was now just a wall of fog bearing down on us. Not knowing what else to do, I hit the gas, charging towards the side road. My husband was scared out of his mind as well. We couldn't hear or see anything. I was so frightened that I could barely breathe. I then saw something on the edge of the fog, something that I hadn't seen before as we were going by. It was a vehicle stuck in a ditch, with its doors open, and two bodies sprawled out on the road. I couldn't just leave them like that. I parked my Jeep and got out to check on them, while trying to get a signal on my cell phone. There was no signal, no sound, nothing but the fog, and a cold chill running up my spine. I couldn't hear my husband anymore, and when I looked back, he was gone from his seat. Seatbelt still clicked into place. I realized that one of the bodies laying in the road was his, and upon closer inspection, the vehicle stuck in the ditch was my own. I looked over to the other body lying in the road, and I was horrified to see that it was me. Backing up, I hauled ass back to my Jeep and tried to get back inside. I needed to get out of here, away from the darkness. I knew it was death, and it was coming for me, but it was already too late. I woke up screaming for my husband and begging him not to leave my side. I was ice cold and was shaken to my core. I couldn't stop crying hysterically. I had to sit in a hot bath just to raise my body temperature. Nothing felt real for hours. I've never had a nightmare like that before or since, and I pray that I never have to experience something like that ever again. I'm a 36-year-old female, but I was in my late 20s when I had this nightmare. My family and I used to live next to a highway that had constant traffic. Right near that highway is this small espresso coffee shop. Our house was nestled in a wooded area, which obstructed it from being seen from that coffee shop, but our long driveway ended right across the street from it. In my dream, I was walking down our long driveway to get the mail. As I was walking, I see this white bus making its way down the road. Traffic is always constant, so I thought nothing of it and continued walking. Suddenly, the bus abruptly turns off the road and stops by the coffee shop. It was then that I heard gunshots ring out, and I saw this large man in orange coveralls emerge from the bus, holding 2 pistols and shooting everything in sight. I could hear panicked screaming and could see people scrambling about and others racing to get inside the coffee shop. To my absolute horror, the man spotted me in the distance. Even though this was a dream, I still acknowledged that if I went back to my house, not only would I be leading this man to where I live, but it would also be putting my mother and my autistic brother in danger. In dreams, time and distance is meaningless, so the man in the orange jumpsuit caught up to me in no time at all. I turned to see his face, and he was glaring at me. I watched as that look of seething, glaring anger instantly turned predatory as he slowly made his way towards me. I felt like he was a wild animal and I was helpless prey. He then told me to get down on the ground and take off my clothes, but something inside told me to stall. I began talking to him calmly as I sat down on the ground. I figured if I could keep him occupied, I might be able to buy some time long enough for the cops to show up. However, as I began talking, the man furiously shouted, "Shut the hell up and take off your clothes." My heart pounded in my chest, and I could see my mother standing in the distance behind him. Not wanting to put her in danger, I kept my eyes from focusing on her, as to not alert the man of her presence, yet I could still see her in my peripheral vision. She was inching closer and closer to him. I was both overjoyed to see her, yet deathly afraid that he would kill her. I don't know what she had planned, but I hoped and prayed by some miracle she would succeed. Irritated, the man got down on one knee and grabbed a hold of my shoulder. He tried to force me down, and that's when I saw my mother appear behind him. She had a large, flat rock in her hands. The man growled in pain as she clobbered him in the back of the head. He turned and tried to point his gun, but before he could take aim, she hit him again, splitting his head open, and he dropped to the ground. His skull had been cracked. Blood and brain matter was now oozing out all over the driveway. My mom, being a nurse, checked his pulse to make sure he was dead. She then checked me over for injuries, before helping me up, and just as we were walking back up the driveway, I woke up. I told my mom about this dream later that day, and the only thing I remember hearing her say was, "Good, I'm glad I helped you out." I've been a connoisseur of all things horror-related for quite some time now. I love watching and talking about scary movies. I love reading and listening to creepy stories, and I even run a well-known horror channel on YouTube. Forgive my hubris, but it does happen to be true. The point is, it usually takes a lot to scare someone like me. The fear that you experience as an adult greatly differs from what you go through as a child. With younger minds, fiction often bleeds into reality. A child can see something on a TV screen or in a book that, without them even knowing it, will later haunt them in their dreams. That's the kind of fear I'm referring to. When your own imagination betrays you when you're at your most vulnerable. This is precisely what happened to me the first time I ever played Resident Evil 2, when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I remember watching Leon being devoured by the undead in the streets of Raccoon City, because I didn't know how to play the game. The pixelated late 90s graphics are laughable to me now, but as a kid, it was a truly horrifying sight. I spent many sleepless nights staring at my closet door, absolutely convinced that a bloodthirsty zombie would come limping out, make its way over to my bed, and take a deep bite out of my throat. If I can go off topic for just a moment, have you ever really thought about how gruesome being eaten alive would actually be? I remember a few years back, there was this, shall we say, free-spirited individual who apparently thought he had a connection with grizzly bears. I can't recall all the details of this incident, but to make a long story short, the guy was eaten alive by a grizzly bear in front of his girlfriend, and an audio recording of it leaked online. I've only heard it once on a Mr. Nightmare video if I remember correctly. You can mark that down in my shit that I never want happening to me list. Anyways, let's get back to the topic at hand. I hardly ever remember my nightmares, but there is one that I can tell you about. It occurred way back in 2013. I was still working as a security guard back then. I remember getting back home after a long shift and just crashing onto my bed as soon as I stepped foot into my bedroom. My vision went from black to me standing outside of a 2-story Victorian home, the kind that you would see in episodes of A Haunting. I appeared to be standing in the middle of the street, under a pitch-black sky. The only light was coming from a flickering lamppost down the street a ways. I remember slowly walking up to the front door of the house. Every step I took echoed out around me. It was like there was microphones in my shoes, and they were connected to a giant PA system hidden somewhere nearby. As I stepped onto the front porch, the echoing suddenly stopped, and I heard a faint whisper coming from the darkness behind me. "Don't." I looked towards the flickering light in the distance, and saw the silhouette of what looked like a young woman standing just beyond the rays of the lamppost. I then said something truly bizarre. "Hey, I told you before I don't need your help, Rebecca. You don't need to show up every time I come here. I'm not a child anymore. Just get out of my head." I had no control over my voice as these words left my mouth. It was almost as if I was a passenger in my own mind. The mysterious woman vanished from view, and I turned back to face the house. The front door was now open. It was like whatever was in this house was pleased that I had told whoever was out on the street to get lost. I don't remember entering the home, but I suddenly found myself standing before an old wooden table. There was an open laptop resting on the table's surface. The computer screen was projecting a night vision video of a bedroom, with the camera angled in the corner of the room, overlooking an old queen-sized bed. As I watched, the video took over my vision. What I mean by that is that it no longer felt like I was watching the bedroom from a computer screen. It felt like I was now in the bedroom. However, everything was still tinted in night vision. I then looked towards the end of the bed and saw an old woman with her back turned to me. I instantly knew that she was bad news. I felt like I was in serious danger. Whoever had been out there on the road was trying to warn me not to enter this house. The old lady had me trapped, and there was no way out. The woman began to slowly turn towards me. Her legs remained stationary, as her top half twisted in my direction. I could see that her arms were elongated, and they dangled off her torso and dragged on the floor, making this gut-wrenching sound as her hand slid across the floorboards. Within seconds, I was staring into a pair of dead, pale eyes. The woman's mouth fell open, and she let out a haunting moan. The last thing I remember was staring into those pale eyes before being grabbed from behind. I woke up drenched in sweat, or at least I thought I did. My phone began to vibrate on the nightstand. After the third ring, I picked it up and held it to my ear without saying hello. I then heard a woman's voice say, "Next time, I won't be there." There was a click, and the line went dead. The next thing I remember was waking up a second time and seeing daylight outside my window. I gave myself a pinch to make sure I was actually awake. This nightmare baffles me for multiple reasons. For one, I remember this dream very vividly, which is not normal for me. When I wake up from a dream, I usually don't remember anything about it, only the vague notion that one had occurred. I also don't know anyone by the name of Rebecca. and when I communicated with her in my dream, it was like I knew who she was, and was even frustrated by her presence. I still wonder to this day if somehow I caught a rare glimpse of an alternate reality that exists within my own subconscious mind. Could such a thing even be possible? Who was this Rebecca? Have I encountered her in my dreams before? Was she the one who saved me from that demonic old lady? These are all very interesting questions, and it's crazy to think about all the endless possibilities of a dream world that resides deep within the recesses of your own subconscious. But there is something that our parents or loved ones have told us at some point in our lives, and it just so happens to be the perfect thing to say to end this story. It was only a dream. Hey everyone, it's your Uncle Unit. Yeah, I know I was supposed to get this video out earlier this week, but some stuff came up and it had to be pushed to today. So let me take this opportunity to wish everybody a very happy Valentine's Day, and I also want to wish the best of luck to anyone who's going to get chased around by their crazy ex with a hatchet tonight. Listen, we've all been there. Happens to the best of us. Just remember to dodge. Anyways, just a friendly reminder that there is only 5 days left to grab a There's Always a Reason to Be Afraid t-shirt from the merch store. After the 5 days, this design will be gone forever. So grab one while you can, folks. And with that, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and hopefully you'll hear from me again very soon. And as always, never forget